Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Karina and tonight's topic is tolerance. As you can see in the intro, it is, well, no, you couldn't see that. It's trial exam time, so there will be 2 exams as always, business as usual. I will first of all quickly show you the task. Those of you who have watched any of my previous streams will know what the task looks like. They're always kind of similar. I'm obviously not very creative when it comes to that. You are always put in the situation of an expert on something, and working for organizations that do some charity work, be it Greenpeace for the environment topic, be it Amnesty in my example, in the tolerance topic or racism topic, whatever, kind of lends itself, because then you are an expert and the whole thing fits, because then the last point always says discuss the topic, and well, the more you know, the more you can discuss, really. So that is one thing that is quite good. So in this case, you work for Amnesty International, or you worked for Amnesty International, because being a student is an expensive thing, and you needed some money on the side. Now that you know so much about the topic, you have to talk about it in school as well, because, well, we're living in times of, like, we live in times where there are a lot of people coming to our country, which then leads to tolerance or intolerance more, and racism. So that is kind of the link to the present. I guess that it's one of those topics where it would be advisable for you to learn some definitions, simply for the fact that it is a topic where you can't really express an opinion. You won't be asked about whether or not you think that tolerance is a good thing or not. Like, you know, it's not a opinion topic in that sense. So I think that it would be good if you knew your definitions, stereotypes and prejudice in bullet point number 1, the classic, give examples of a stereotype, give examples of prejudice that are around, and what's the difference, even though they're, like, at a first glance, they're quite similar, I think. But then there is differences, obviously. The push and pull factors, you have them in your books. From what I know, you all use the same book. There's a page that gives you push and pull factors. So reasons why people leave their own country, that would be the push factors, because you get pushed out of the country. And the pull factors, that's the factors that are attractive in other countries. So if we take Austria, the question is, what pull factors are there? Why are people coming to Austria? Guess there's more to it than mountains and friendly people. So there must be some push and pull factors, or pull factors, that make Austria an attractive place. And possible reasons for racism. So why do we not just accept people when they come? Some more definitions in the second one. So we discuss the topic. There is differences between direct and indirect discrimination, hard word. Quite self-explanatory, I think. So if you get a text that talks about direct and indirect discrimination, I guess you can, even if you have never heard the word, you might be able to guess. Structural discrimination, harder one. If you don't know it, might not be an easy guess. Multiple discrimination makes sense as well, I think, from the word. And racism versus xenophobia. Not much difference, but xenophobia is sometimes used as the explanation for racism, basically, because racism is the thing, the outcome, but xenophobia is the reason for the whole thing. And then we have some follow-up questions. That's number 1. Are you ready?
Yes.
Is this number 1, actually? Yes.
This is number 1.
One more thing, the second exam will then go, or I tried to include as many aspects as possible. The second one will be less about racism, but more about, well, why people are so intolerant, which then is kind of a subchapter of racism. And the question will then be how we can make the world a better place, how we can make, well, the world more tolerant, but that's exam number 2. I thought that this makes sense as exam number 1 because it will give you like all the introductory input that you need for exam number 2. So, now my picture is so big that I can't see anything. Okay.
So I have to change to...
There we go. Say hi to Chris.
There we go.
The picture's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you have a bit in this direction. Yeah.
That's still quite weird, isn't it? Well,
Okay.
anyway. So you can see
yeah.
my arm and me, and separately my arm. That is really weird. Well, anyway. So, that's strange. You're here tonight to take your A-levels.
Yes.
Would you
yes,
mind
yes.
introducing yourself first off?
My name is Christoph, and I've decided to do the A-levels because I want to become a history teacher.
Nice.
Yes, and in the past I worked as a mechanic
Okay.
for
Interesting.
5 years now. I've worked for as a mechanic, but now it's time to do something different, and I've decided to do the A-levels in order to be able to become a history teacher.
So nice.
Yeah.
What will your second subject be then? You need a second one.
Do we need a
His-
second one?
History alone doesn't get you very far.
Oh.
Sorry to...
Oh, I didn't know that, but I think geography is very
that's a good one.
interesting.
That's a good one. If you like history, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't want to study it, I suppose. Well, that's a topic that kind of lends itself, I suppose. One of those historically embedded topics. So, could you tell us what you understand under the term of racism, stereotypes, prejudice, and so on and so forth?
Yes, of course. First have to switch to the... Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'd like to welcome you to a talk about racism, and I'm gonna mention the 3 things in my short talk, which are definition of racism, reasons why people immigrate, and reasons for racism, so possible reasons. Possible reasons
That
for
one.
racism. The definition of racism, so racism can be defined as an ideology that has certain prejudices. So, for example, in racism, the prejudice is that, for example, a certain group of people is inferior to the white race, for example. Or it can also work in the other direction, of course. It's not concerned about the type of race, but it's concerned toward those prejudices, certain prejudices. Yeah. Reasons why people immigrate. There are a few reasons, I think. Let's talk about the push factors, and let's talk about, for example, of Syria. There, of course, a push factor is that there is war, so people emigrate from the country. Immigrate is the opposite term. So, for example, why do people come here to Austria? Maybe because we have certain standards of living, or maybe people just think that it's better in Europe. Those are the push factors of our country in this example, or of Europe or some other country. It depends. Sometimes it's economically that maybe people have better living standards or better opportunities to get jobs. Different factors. There are a lot of factors actually. And the reasons or possible reasons for racism, I think it's very difficult to give a full answer here, or a very encompassing answer, because it depends, of course, how we individually see different reasons for racism. But of course, there are the traditional reasons for racism, which are closely linked to xenophobia, which is the fear of foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is a reason. And another big reason is propaganda on the part of politicians, and just spreading rumors. I think it's very, very important tool of right-wing parties nowadays, that they just spread everything that has to do with foreigners in a bad way. They want to spread and kind of raise or make people aware how bad some of them are. It's very, very interesting, but sad topic at the same time.
That's definitely true. So you're saying that certain political directions work with xenophobia because, because they know that there's potential, because people are a bit afraid of the unknown anyway, and they would. Can you think, or do you have any idea what any educated guesses on what direct and indirect that is a really hard word, discrimination could be?
Yeah, so direct, actually those two words in front of the word discrimination already give us a hint, or even more than a hint, what is it all about, those two terms. But direct discrimination is about discrimination towards people, and you're not hiding it. I think it's best explained in this way. So an obvious discrimination. Whereas indirect discrimination can be a more hidden discrimination. Maybe it's hidden in a law or in a rule or protocol. So, for example, it would be that indirect discrimination would be such as you're not allowed to be an online streamer if you're not taller than, if you're smaller. No, yeah. If it's about the height, I don't know how tall or not, short. It's because it would, of course, some women are not that tall as men.
True.
And it would limit women, for example, for this job, or would not limit, prevent them from doing this job, being able to do this job, actually.
Interesting point that you raised something different than the race issue. I didn't think about that. You know, discrimination for me is kind of always like having to do with ethnic background, skin colors, whatever, religion in our cases. as you know a lot about history, because that's going to be your future,
Yeah.
there was a lot of structural discrimination going on in England. So if black people being banned from certain type of schools, and they were not allowed to, like you as a landlord could decide whether or not you want a black tenant and stuff like that. And they introduced a lot of laws against this. Do you think there's structural discrimination like that in Austria as well? Or are we now that far that everyone can go to every type of school and do whatever they want and have landlords that have no prejudice against the Syrian immigrants that you mentioned in the beginning, for example?
Well, they can visit, when we speak about school, they can visit the school. But of course, there are certain landlords that have prejudices against them. So
Right.
if we speak of landlords, meaning with renting a flat, for example, there are obvious prejudices that foreigners are not that welcomed by them. I know a few examples, and we could say that this type of structural discrimination
A lot of hard words
is
today.
present, but not that obvious as in the past.
Okay.
But
So
I think
things are changing.
yeah, slowly, but yeah, slowly.
What would you say, last question, because time's up already, almost. You mentioned the push and pull factors, like countries like Austria and Germany are very popular. That's a fact. What would you say is the most attractive pull factor for people to come to us? The nice mountains. Not everybody cares about skiing, I guess. So that
Yeah,
doesn't-
I think it's maybe the insurance system, especially in Austria. I think in Germany, it's also very, very good. Speaking of, you don't have to work that much that you get insurance, or you're insured if you work. So that's a very attractive thing, I think. And yeah, I think all the not only the insurance system, also the health system, healthcare is very good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That was it. We all know a lot about racism and discrimination. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let's have a quick analysis. I'm pretty sure you all by now had this one stream or were present or had the chance to look at it at least, where someone, it was me as I was on holiday for a while, did talk about the scales that you get graded on according to.
Yeah, I talked about it.
Great. He talked about it. So if what I say doesn't make any sense because you did not watch the stream, do so. It's online somewhere, look it up. If whatever I'm going to say now doesn't make any sense. We talked about everything. The only 2 points that we sort of kind of circumnavigated was the stereotypes and the prejudice. So probably there would be, well, in the task achievement, we talked about everything else. We talked about the push and pull factors. We also talked about the possible reasons for racism. There is no law that says what the extent has to be. So there's no law that says, well, your monologue is 3 to 4 minutes. So it's not that you have to talk for exactly 1 minute about one bullet point. There is no rule saying that you have to mention what is in the bullet points. So we kind of did not really talk about stereotypes and prejudice. So I guess that would be -1 maybe, because that was kind of, well, avoided, which you probably will have to do in your exams as well. I'm pretty sure that there's, well, it depends on the topic, I guess, but it's quite likely that there is something in your text or in your bullet points that you don't really want to talk about or can't talk about because you don't know the definitions. And in oral exam situations, things are different anyway. Maybe you know the definitions, but just can't come up with it really because you're nervous and so on and so forth. Practice them well, by the way. Definitions is you can get a lot of points for something that you can study at home, really. The rest was there. We talked about everything that was in task number 2, apart from the multiple discrimination, but then he talked about it maybe without him being conscious about it, but multiple discrimination is if you get discriminated in more than one area in your life. Women, for example. The standard example is that women get discriminated for being a woman, and then if they are from a different ethnic background, then they have a problem. So being a Muslim woman, for example, would be multiple discrimination because you get discriminated for being a woman and also for being a Muslim. So, so we did talk about that, and yeah, that was it. So, exam number 2. I find it really great that I have a PDF today that I can draw on. That makes me very happy. Hello? Okay. Number 2, maybe the one that is a little less based on definitions, a little more, well, talking, let's put it that way. You're interested in intolerance in society because that's what we are confronted with at the moment. I think that we hear a lot about, well, people not being very tolerant towards others. We mentioned the whole like political aspect anyway, and I guess present day politics are kind of fostering this like intolerance a little bit. You follow the media coverage, which is painful, but you do. So you know a lot about it, and you inform your fellow students because and the staff of the school as well. So it's kind of a, I don't know, tag the offer into a situation and you're talking about it because, well, definition of the concepts of tolerance, acceptance and understanding in many texts, because the topic is tolerance and education, or in your book the topic is tolerance and education, there is always this question what to do with people from different ethnic backgrounds, what to do with people who don't speak German on a C2 level. So the question is, well, tolerance is quite self-explanatory, but then there's a difference between tolerance, acceptance, and understanding in the whole like integration topic. What are the differences, and well, is society affected by it? Are you affected by it in your workplace, and so on and so forth? Reasons why people are becoming less and less tolerant. I think, well, you can come up with personal reasons, stuff that you think, or go like alongside the political stuff. Possible ways on how to teach people to be more tolerant. Can we teach it? Should it be taught to kids? Usually experts basically say, well, if we start, then we should start early in kindergarten, in primary school, something like that, because kids are usually not racist. And if we teach them, well, the benefits of a society where more than, like, where many people live together, then that can only be advantageous. But then the question is, can tolerance be taught? What about your parents? Like, you can be the most tolerant person on earth, but if you always have this influence of people who are not, you might change your opinion or not. So, something you can discuss. Well, can it be taught in school? I think that's one of the aspects that your book covers. Nowadays they are discussing a lot of different ideas on how to do it. Well, some people think that it should be included into religious education, or those people who don't go to religious education in the ethics lessons. But then, well, would make sense or not? Should it be an own subject? Nowadays there's separate subjects on everything. Nowadays you can also have, I don't know, subjects on Ernährungslehre or whatever, so you can also have that. Yes or no? You can discuss that. And the text is on how to become more tolerant. I think the text is actually quite good. Gives you, so you could look it up afterwards. The links will be posted. The text is quite nice. It gives you a lot of ideas on how you, or not you personally, but people in general, could become more tolerant without being like too scientific and without making things super complicated. It gives you very nice basic ideas, like stuff like, I don't know, befriend people who are from a different culture, talk to them, stuff like that. So pretty easy stuff. So it's not something like super scientific. Sometimes people, sometimes texts about such topics tend to be hard reads, but this one is a nice one. Okay, are you ready? Same question as always.
Yes, I am super ready. Now we're gonna.
Yay!
Now it's better. We
so
fixed
now
it.
You're really good at stuff like that. You should become, I don't know, an IT guy. That's
No.
the new that's the new personality that you can adopt. Anyway, would you mind telling us who you are, please?
Yes, my name is Jeff. I'm currently doing the Berufsreifeprüfung here at the WIFI, and the English oral A-level exams are actually the first exams
Nice.
in the row of math and German, not German. And I decided back in the year 2014 that I want to do the A-levels or want to do the Berufsreifeprüfung at the WIFI because I was sick of my job. I did a job at an office which was really boring, and yeah, I did some accounting for a big company, and although I'm good with numbers and all the stuff, it's just I can't use that word now, but it's really exhausting, and therefore I'm doing the A-levels, and in future I have plans to open up a swimming school.
Oh, nice.
But not a ordinary swimming school. I want to study biology, and then I want to open up a swimming school that focuses on the creatures you can find in the sea. So I want to open up the swimming school somewhere else, not in Innsbruck.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been my next question. That sounds nice.
Caribbean, actually.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be very nice. I was in Cuba for the past 3 years, so Caribbean. If you need any connections, let me know. I'll establish them for you. Swimming schools are always good, and they like Austrians. Most of the time they don't know where Austria is, but when they figured out where it is, then they kind of know us, kind of like us. Anyway, sort of. Good. Your topic is, well, a quite heavy one, but as you are thinking about emigrating, you might be confronted with it anyway.
Yes.
So there is these 3 concepts out there: tolerance, acceptance, and understanding. What are they, and which ones would, like, if you go abroad, what would you be, or what would you want to be? Would you want to be tolerated, accepted, or understood? Like, if we talk about the concepts.
Yeah. So, to give a definition of those 3 terms, well, tolerance, being tolerated, is, I think, the most highest highest ranked terms of all those 3, since we can rank it as follows: that tolerance is at the very top, then followed by acceptance, and then understanding. So understanding, for example, is if you're okay, if people are generally okay with you. You're understood, so you can be here, but it would be better maybe if you're not here. But it's okay generally. accepted is more or less if you're think if society somehow accepts you, and tolerance is if the society, maybe in another country, totally tolerates you as an individual. For example, they tolerate you or as if you were one of them, for example. So no prejudices, no differentiating by skin color or ethnicity or religion. That's tolerance, and that's the thing most of us should long for, I think. Yeah,
It's true. Why are we getting less and less tolerant then?
yes.
You're hopefully not the only person in the world who thinks so. I hope. But why
I
are we?
think it has a lot to do with politics, of course, and of course immigration. So there's, of course, if there are people are coming to, for example, our country, some people think they're dangerous for our country or a menace for our country. Which has been a thing since, I don't know how long, but it has always been this phenomenon. If somebody or a lot of people make an exodus into another country, that the country that receives those people, or receives the people, is develops some kind of national program against them. So that's has also to do with the term of nations, or being a nation and identifying yourself and the inhabitants of a nation as a Austrian, for example. What makes you an Austrian? I don't think in that terms, but a lot of people do. And of course, therefore, tolerance is also kind of, tolerance vanishes more or less. Yeah.
Can those people, like you said, those people who think in nations and take their Austrian border maybe a little more serious than it needs to be taken, can those people be taught otherwise? Like, can I convince a 55-year-old who has always had that kind of, well, I'm Austrian and I'm very proud of it attitude, or regardless of the age, doesn't have to be 55, can be 23 as well, but can I teach those people?
I do think so, and I think it starts with, at first, that people should start examine, for example, newspapers, or general news media more detailed. So there are a lot of people out there that are just reading an article, and it's just written by some journalist of a tabloid or something. And of course, they're shocked by a headline. For example, foreigner, I don't know, steals something. That's a common headline, actually.
True.
Unfortunately. And they believe this, of course, and they don't kind of do proper research and think about it. They just soak it up and tell their friends. And if they would at first maybe do a research, or start just thinking that we're all people and everywhere are bad people. It doesn't matter where they're from, which religion they practice, or which skin color they have. It doesn't. I think we should start thinking differently, and I think it's even people that have a traditional view on that. I think they can be taught this.
Okay.
Of course, sometimes it's very difficult.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, last question, because you're almost through. Austria, like, think about the Austrian school system, whatever you like, but we do have this trend of like introducing subjects that we feel the need. Like there was this discussion of having more sports lessons because kids are getting like more and more unfit. We had this like digital education kind of thing, so don't sit in front of social media all day. That's all taught in school. Nowadays, is there a need for tolerance lessons? Kind of
Yes,
thing?
I do think so. And as with this, this oral exam or with the Berufsreifeprüfung in general, tolerance is a topic, and in English, and I think it's really easy to make just 1 or 2 lessons about tolerance in the English English class. So, of course, there are other subjects we can also talk about tolerance, but in English, I think it's very easy and a good topic to talk about, and it should be taught in school. I think it's very important, way more important than all the social media thing. It's I think tolerance is if people or if the pupils haven't been taught by their parents, maybe the teacher could tell them what it's all about, and maybe they kind of contemplate about it and start changing their view towards other people.
So school as a little backup for the parents, but you would not make it a known subject. You would include it in whatever there is history and
I would
English and German.
include it. I think.
Yeah,
but of course it depends on the curriculum you have.
Well, yeah, I guess it can be included easily in languages and everything. Yep.
Normally.
That was it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good. I will not, because today I have PDF files, and that means that I can embellish my incredibly great exam with my even more incredible handwriting. Same thing, I won't talk you through the task achievement and so on points. I will just tell you a couple of things that I noticed that I thought were good that you could do as well. First of all, in the beginning, I actually meant to write down the example as well, but I can't remember. I can't remember what he said, but anyway, there was a word in what he said that clearly sounded as if he had studied the vocab before. Why the word vocab is on the sheet now is simply try to include some words that are like related to the topic, so that your interlocutors actually see that you did your vocab work, that you did your homework, that you studied some vocab that is related to the topic as well. As I said, I can't remember what it was, but anyway, it was a really good word in any case. And my point is study vocab that is related to the topic, and also study in your A levels, you're aiming at B2 level. B2 level in the lexical range, like in the range and vocabulary point. Like B2 level means that you should know a bit more than only basic conversational English, so you should also know some specific terms. So do that. Learning vocab is fun. Also, I always thought. He mentioned the nation aspect, so that we have this very strong tendency to think in nations and Austrian boundaries, other countries even more so, even build walls around their great nations. But that was a very good point, because he added something that neither me nor the text nor the bullet points mentioned. So that was a new idea, which is good. You should always prove that there's some extra textual knowledge somewhere in your heads. Very good example. Nowadays, quite easy, like countries like Hungary and America have decided or are planning on building walls so as to protect their nation. So you can always include that because they're so scared of all those bad immigrants to come. And what was nice as well, I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, I asked the question and there was quite a lot of time in between because he said a lot in between, but then he still tried to answer the question. Like he was basically closing the cycle, like pointing out that he is now actually responding to my question really, despite the fact that there was quite a lot of text in between, which is good. First of all, it's kind of signals to your interlocutors that you are done now, so that was the last thing that he had to say about the topic, and it kind of closed the cycle. So make sure that your audience knows when you're actually done about like a certain point. I should actually start writing down things. What did I ask you? I think it was a question about why do people become less and less tolerant, and we then talked about like the whole nation concept and so on and so forth, about the political thing. But then he kind of said, well, yeah, so I think that, so yes, I think that people are becoming less and less tolerant, which was a prompt for me that that this question is over, and it also closed the whole thing. I think that was the example, but anyway, you got the point. I think that's it. Anything anyone wants to know from me?
No,
Good.
not so far.
Good. Well, then we will post the links as always. Have a look at the text, especially the one for tolerance number 2. So the one that has www.healthguidance.org. They do quite a lot of good text, actually. You might look them up for the health topics and so on as well. The second one is a bit harder, a bit more scientific, quite hard read, or so I thought. Yeah, I'll be back, or we will be back next week. Should you have any questions, let us know. Thank you very much and good night.